As the sun dipped below the horizon, the house loomed in the twilight, its windows dark and uninviting. The air was cold and heavy, and even the streetlights outside seemed dimmer near the house. Sarah pushed open the creaking front door, her flashlight cutting through the thick darkness. The air inside smelled of mildew and something metallic, faint but persistent. She steeled herself, muttering, "Just an old house with old stories." The first few hours passed uneventfully. Sarah wandered through the parlor, the dining room, and the courtroom, scribbling notes about the creaking floorboards and the unsettling silence. She found herself drawn to the staircase, which spiraled upward like a skeletal hand reaching for the heavens. It was said that Thomas Whaley himself still lingered here, his footsteps echoing late at night. Sarah climbed the stairs, each step groaning under her weight. At the top, the air grew colder, and she noticed her breath fogging in front of her face. The second floor was eerily quiet, except for the faint sound of a piano note echoing from somewhere deeper in the house. She froze, her flashlight beam trembling as she whispered, "Who's there?" Silence. Gathering her courage, she followed the sound to the music room. The piano sat untouched, its ivory keys yellowed with age. As she turned to leave, a sharp slam reverberated through the house. She spun around, heart racing, and saw the door she had just walked through was now shut tight. "Old wood," she whispered, trying to calm herself. But then she heard it, the sound of footsteps, deliberate and heavy, coming from the hallway. They stopped just outside the door. Sarah's flashlight flickered, plunging her into brief darkness. When the light returned, she gasped. Standing in the corner of the room was a faint figure, its outline shimmering like heat waves. The figure turned its head slowly, hollow eyes locking onto hers. Sarah stumbled backward, her breath catching in her throat. The figure raised an arm, pointing toward the window. Without thinking, she turned to look, and for a split second, she saw a noose swaying gently in the moonlight before the room plunged into darkness again. Panic set in. She bolted for the door, yanking it open and sprinting down the hallway. But the house seemed alive now, the walls groaning and whispering as if mocking her. She reached the staircase, only to find it impossibly longer than before, stretching downward into an abyss of shadows. The whispers grew louder, overlapping voices speaking in a language she couldn't understand. "Stop this!" she yelled, her voice cracking. "You're not real!" A child's laughter echoed behind her, chilling and unnatural. She whipped around and saw a little girl in a white dress standing at the end of the hallway. The girl's head tilted unnaturally to the side, and she raised a hand to wave. Then, without warning, the girl rushed toward her, her footsteps impossibly fast and silent. Sarah screamed, stumbling down the stairs, her body colliding with the banister. She landed in the courtroom, where the air felt suffocatingly thick. The portraits on the walls seemed to watch her, their painted eyes following her every move. Then, the gavel on the judge's bench slammed down on its own, the sharp sound echoing like a gunshot. She scrambled to her feet, tears streaming down her face as she ran for the front door. But no matter how hard she pulled, the door wouldn't budge. Behind her, the whispers turned into guttural growls, and she felt a cold breath on the back of her neck. Turning slowly, she saw the faint outline of a man, his face contorted in rage, his hands reaching for her throat. "No!" she screamed, kicking and clawing at the door. Finally, it gave way, and she tumbled onto the front porch. The cold night air hit her like a wave, and she scrambled to her feet, running as far from the house as her legs would carry her. The next morning, Sarah sat in her car, trembling and clutching her notebook. She stared at the house from a distance, its windows now bathed in sunlight and looking almost ordinary. But she knew the truth. The Whaley House was more than just haunted. It was alive, feeding on the fear of those who dared to enter. When she opened her notebook to review her notes, she froze. The pages were filled with words she hadn't written, scrawled in jagged handwriting. "You can leave, but you will never escape." Sarah slammed the notebook shut and drove away, vowing never to speak of that night again. But deep down, she knew the house wasn't done with her. It had marked her, and one day, it would call her back.